Superpowers have their limits and they're not always what you expect. The Wonder Twins, the alien teen sidekicks of Hanna-Barbera's Super Friends animated series of the 1970s, remain one of these strange outliers in the overall DC universe. These two definitely hang out on the goofier end of the DC pantheon, owing largely to their cheesy catchphrase and flat-out bizarre powers. Oh, and the fact that they basically have to fist bump or touch rings in order to transform. While Jaina could boast a reasonable amount of utility with her ability to transform into any animal, Zan is kind of limited to ice and water forms, and has had to bend over backwards to serve any kind of useful purpose. So this led to things like Zan preventing a fall by turning into a giant gelatin dessert, and Jaina carrying her brother from place to place in a bucket. Also, they didn't really have any thematic connection to each other, and beyond their ability to activate their powers by touching, their superpowers felt very random and very forced. With a moniker that's just Skin, this next guy isn't starting off too strong. What's his power, you ask? 6 feet of extra stretchy skin. Angelo Espinosa was a former gang member from the East Los Angeles area who faked his own death for numerous reasons. Most importantly, to hide his newly manifested mutation from his family and to leave that part of his life behind. Skin was one of 4 young mutants, including M, Husk, and Blink, that were abducted by a techno-organic alien race. Why? Well, they wanted to uncover the secrets behind powers. Going back to Skin, his power, those 6 feet of extra flappy skin, that's gotta be hell on wheels to lug around. Skin isn't a combat organ. It's so weak against damage that we invented armor. It's so weak against nothing that we invented clothes. When your mutant power makes you more vulnerable to injury, you really shouldn't be calling attention to yourself. Which is advice that Skin did not take. He was eventually went the way of Jesus on the lawn of the X-Mansion, and the wrong name was written on his gravestone. Then he was dug up and cremated. Look, that's just a way of writing somebody out with extreme prejudice. Even in Skin's depiction, his backpack had really unnecessarily long flaps. Like, this guy just couldn't cut a break. Rainbow Girl has a very unique ability, the power of emotions. In her first appearance, she was able to create a pheromone field that resembled a rainbow through her powers. Now, this caused everybody near her to like her. Now, while this didn't continue in future iterations of the character, it was an interesting addition to a somewhat confusing ability. Unfortunately for Rainbow Girl, she suffers from mood swings because of those abilities. One concrete use of her abilities is that she can fairly easily use different types of lantern core rings. So she's been depicted using the red ring, which is based on anger, the blue ring, which runs on strength, and the green ring, which relies on willpower. Presumably she can use the others as well. So her power clearly augments that of other devices when applicable. Even though Rainbow Girl herself doesn't understand the full extent of her power, she is using them for good as much as she can. The ability to detach limbs doesn't seem very useful at first glance, and the Legion of Superheroes kind of agrees with me, because they rejected Floyd Belkin, otherwise known as Arm Fall-Off Boy, when he tried to join the organization. Granted the ability to detach and reattach his limbs at will, Floyd could extend his reach and leverage at the cost of having the full use of his limbs. Floyd Belkin, by the way, is not the only character to have this power. Corey Pitzner, also known as the Detachable Kid, had the exact same abilities. Granted, unlike Floyd, Corey decided to put his powers to use for villainy, even briefly joining the Suicide Squad. While both characters were relatively successful in their fields, with Floyd even assisting the Legion of Superheroes on occasion, despite his rejection, this is a power that is obviously more hindersome than helpful. Only a handful of Marvel characters have used the Minoru's family Staff of One. This staff used to be an ancient magical entity that was called the One, but Tokiko Minoru, so Nico's ancestor, conquered it and turned it into a magical weapon that has gone through many generations in the family. Now, this is a unique weapon because it only works if you shed human redness. Even if your gums are exuding some redness, that's gonna work. The strength of the spell also seems to be directly tied to the amount of redness shed. Also, it can only cast each spell once per user. Any attempt at the same user repeating a spell results in either a complete failure or an unpredictable magic result. So that means Nico has to be very creative whenever she uses it. There isn't any other staff like this one in the comics. Sure, the staff is almost limitless in its powers, but you got the drawbacks. So is it worth it? As the nature of his powers have changed over the years, Green Lantern has had plenty of weaknesses, but I think his greatest weakness is one that I think we all want to forget, and only after one villain managed to come up with an exploit that is actually based on how Green Lanterns use their powers. So the Green Lantern guys use their power rings to fly. They use them to automatically translate alien languages, and most famously to create energy constructs of any form the user wills. While these abilities needed some sort of weakness to balance them out, the solutions were less than perfect. perfect. The original Green Lantern, Alan Scott's weakness to wood stemmed from his subconscious belief that his powers couldn't affect the material. Now, the later Lantern's weaknesses to the color yellow came from the fear entity trapped within the Green Lantern Corps' central power battery. And while each of these explanations provide a plausible reason for those classic weaknesses, they still feel kinda random. Jin Genie was once an X-Force member who became more powerful the more they imbibed. This character is a mutant who, other than assuredly being a fun time at any beach party, has the ability to create seismic waves equal in strength to the level of alcohol in her blood. So this booze-powered mutant, unfortunately, meets her end early on in her career, though she certainly left quite an impression on the entire Marvel Universe. In the universe of The Boys is a power that even I can't wrap my mind around. So among the unfortunate test subjects at the Sage Grove Center in The Boys is a very weirdly powered individual. Unnamed, but they were shown to have acidic powers, meaning they can spit out upchuck that looks like something melting, and contains acidic subjects that can immediately injure an opponent upon contact. Sounds pretty cool, right? I'm sure we can all agree that superpower is strange, peculiar, but it's got a drawback, or else I wouldn't be here today. So the patient himself is not immune to his own spit. So when he's fighting off everybody, he winds up burning parts of his face with his own spit. One would think that, like, I don't know, immunity to your own powers would be part of the package deal, but I guess not in this case. Although the non-powered Huey has been an invaluable member of the Boys from the beginning, he's like, hey, I would like powers. So he's gonna take some Compound V, and he gained the ability to teleport at will. But his power, very notably, doesn't let him bring his clothes along for the ride. So as useful as teleportation is as a super ability, the instant nudeness kinda left him scrambling for clothes, or in the center of very awkward situations. Oh, and if you're hitching a ride with him, yeah, game over for your clothes too. And one more time, because I love The Boys so much, Kimiko's brother, Kenji. He was mentioned in the first season, but we didn't really get to see him until season 2, and we see his crazy abilities. So sure, Kimiko, she was able to escape, but Kenji was conscripted and had to serve the big bad Shining Light Liberation Army. Not great. Oh, and did I mention he's got telekinetic hands, which make him a deadly threat? So these powers are first shown when he's able to lift an entire boat and throw it. So we're like, okay, he's powerful. And when he encounters everybody, we're like, okay, boy's got powers, I'm terrified. He's even able to step up to Homelander. He brings like a sewer system down on the soup's head. But here's the thing, his power is limited to his hands. So when Stormfront breaks his hands, Kenji is left powerless and easily killed. And that's all for today, folks. I've been Alexa. See ya! So while Jaina could boast a reasonable amount of utility with her former gang member from the East Los great, we're all cursed. Plausible reason for those classic weaknesses, they feel kind of random. Yep, and while each of these